Hello guys and welcome to my new video. So today I decided to do a week overview video of the news that I thought that were interesting, and in this video we'll be covering what happens to Mythic Argus below 20% phase. Is there something new that's happening? We'll be looking at that because one of the Asian guilds is still streaming the full-on Mythic Argus progression. We'll be looking at the Mythic Plus Combat Resurrection changes on the 7.3.5 PTR servers, how that's going to affect the Mythic Plus pushing, how that's going to affect classes. Is it good, is it bad? My personal opinions about it. We'll be looking at some of the top runs for the Mythic Plus. I know there's been Court of Stars 25 completed, and I know there's World of Warcraft plus 26 have been completed, and we'll be looking at some of the group composition and the class stacking, or if there is any class stacking for those runs. So let's first have a look at Mythic Argus below 20% progression. So like I said, an Asian guild style has been it's been streaming Mythic Argus progression. It's really interesting to see. I've covered this before. They were the only kind of guild that was streaming this kind of progression, and you can see they kind of opted in to use the 3 healers, this priest, holy paladin, restoration, shaman deal with 2 brewmaster monks. So they kind of copied one of the top guild, kind of copied the Exorsus raid composition. In again, you need to optimize DPS in this fight. Previously they were stuck at around 35-40% phase. They were kind of, the boss was enraging at that point, they were lacking DPS, but now there's actually a couple of tries, so they got to like 17%, and as I'm recording this video, I think they got onto 15% as well. And you can see in the video here where they actually got the boss below 19. They actually got, in this try, they got the boss to 17%, and there really nothing new happens here. You can see that the orbs that actually envelop the whole platform, there's about 3 or 4 of them that are spawned at the same time. You need to make sure to DPS them down, but there is no secret transition happening at 20%, sadly. So it begs the question whether it's going to happen around 15, 10%, 5% or whatever, or maybe it's not even going to happen at all. So it's sad, but we might have to wait until the boss skill videos have been released to actually see what kind of secret. I really hope there is something more to this than just what we saw from phase 3. So that's to do with the Mythic Argus progression. That's to do with the new guild, with the Asian guild streaming it. Now let's have a look at the Mythic Plus combat changes. So res right now, combat res, and I actually know that not many people know this about combat resurrection right now in Mythic Plus dungeons. If you get battle res right now in 7.3.2, it does not matter if you accept or not accept or whatever, the cooldown for the person who used the battle res on you is already started. Doesn't matter if you accept or you don't. So the minute, as a restoration druid, as a balance druid, whatever, I use my battle res on someone, 10-minute cooldown has started straight away on me. It doesn't matter if you accept it or not. Now what they're going to change is 7.3.5, at least the intended changes they're going to do. They're going to battle res is going to share cooldown, so very similar to what is happening in raids. It's going to be in every 18 minutes. You're going to get 1 charge when you start a dungeon, and every 18 minutes you're going to get a 2nd charge. So for majority of the dungeons, you're going to have 2 battle resurrections happening. And the way that they're going to implement it is that if I battle res someone, and if they don't accept, then I get my charge back, or the party gets a charge of battle res back. So it's very similar to what raids are. It's very similar to how they function. It's presuming that the shaman resurrection and ancestral protection totem, the battle res totem, is not going to eat up a charge. But that is not tested yet. So this change is partly coming from the Mythic Dungeon Invitational. There was devs talking about how a lot of the comps were stacking battle res classes, especially for high tyrannical keys, because in high tyrannical keys, for example, BRH, DHT, Dark Heart Ticket, Eye of a Sharon, things like that, like, you know, the boss, there's so many bosses that just one-shot you at high tyrannical, like plus 20, will just one-shot you. And the abilities happen every 20-30 seconds, And there's very few classes in the game that have personal cooldowns on every like 10-20 second cooldown strong enough to keep you alive. So for high tyrannical keys, a lot of the compositions for used to need to have battle res classes. There's no other way to bypass it, and that's partly due because of how Blizzard has created these high Mythic Plus keys. They didn't really balance really high Mythic Plus dungeons. They didn't balance it based on class HP. They didn't balance on player HP. They just said, we're just gonna increase the damage. We're not gonna balance it. The higher key you do, the higher damage it is, and we don't care that it's going to one-shot you. We don't care that some ability is just super overpowered. We're not gonna balance that. We're just gonna let you do as high keys as possible, and then you'll just do whatever you want to survive. It's partly fun, and it's partly broken. It's fun because you get these super crazy abilities that are really, really hard to bypass. It's not fun being a class that does not have, for example, shamans, for example, priests, who do not have really good personal cooldowns, really good short personal cooldown, and they are lacking, especially for high tyrannical keys, because in a high tyrannical key boss, example, Dark Ticket Shade of Xavius, when it does the little volley or whatever, or like the drain ability, that can tick for like 3 million a second, probably even more than that. Like, it's literally impossible to prevent to actually not die without using a personal cooldown, and that happens. That can happen like twice in a row to you within 10 seconds. Or within 20 seconds. So having battle res was really, really important. Having short CDs, short personal CDs was really, really, really important to push these high mythic keys. Now, if you don't push high mythic keys, this change is really not going to affect you at all. It doesn't really matter. The thing about, for the people who are pushing really high mythic keys, there's a big discussion between you're removing battle res, you're solving one problem, but you're introducing a problem of stacking immunity classes. For example, a Druid right now is probably one of the strongest personal cooldown class in the game. Bear form with Frenzy Regen is arguably one of the best cooldowns that has no cooldown, can be used anytime you want, can make you basically as strong as a tank, and like I said, can be used on every boss that one-shots and you probably will survive. So does that mean now that you're not going to be stacking battle res classes, but you're going to be stacking super, super good immunity classes like Druids, for example, with the bear form? So it's not really, it's fixing one issue, but creating another issue. So I really don't feel like this is, there's other ways of doing this. A lot of people have suggested that maybe you could tune down the tyrannical keys, so for example, bosses that one-shot, and tune them down to maybe deal a bit less damage. But that kind of like goes against what Blizzard did at the start of not basically tuning anything, just letting you do as high keys as possible and letting you handle the situation. But this is directly in conflict with bringing other classes, and it's directly in conflict with nerfing battle res. Because like I said, you nerf battle res, you're going to introduce more stacking of high immunity classes. And if you're like a priest or shaman or whatever, you don't have that many great cooldowns available to you, and you most likely will be left out for high tyrannical keys. Like for example, there already isn't that many restoration shamans or like discipline priests or whatever doing really high tyrannical keys. Like I mean, there are ways to bypass it, but this change can really isn't. I don't feel this is enough. Maybe in 7.3.5 they're going to change some of the bosses in Mythic Plus. Maybe they're going to. It's either give more immunities to certain classes, remove battle res or like nerf battle res, or either change the boss damage. Right now what they did by just changing battle res is not enough. There's going to be class stacking. You might not stack as many battle res classes, but you'll be stacking more immunity classes. Either put immunities on every class similar. There's a lot of different ways to change this, but this change by itself is not enough. This is the way I feel. Now, I really want to know your opinion about this. I think it's really, really interesting to see what you feel about this, and keeping up with the Mythic Plus changes and keeping up with the Mythic Plus content. There's been a few really high dungeons done this week. There's been a plus 25 Dark Heart ticket. There's been a plus 25 quarter stars. The same team who did 25 quarter stars actually did it in time. It was a Windwalker Monk, Balance Druid, Resto Druid, Affliction Warlock, and a Vengeance Demon Hunter. Now, I've actually been saying since the changes that happened to Windwalkers, the Windwalkers are going to be really, really good. If you actually look at some of the changes or some of the DPS meters for Windwalkers in Antorus Mythic, they're doing really, really well. I feel that Windwalkers could be doing really well in Mythic Plus, and you can see this here, that in 25 quarter stars and as well as 26 Vault of Wardens, there's been a Windwalker Monk brought in, especially because it is fortified. The Windwalkers are great on fortified. I feel Windwalkers are good on single target as well. And you always see a Balanced Druid. You see a Restoration Druid there as well. Affliction Warlocks are strong as well on the fortified weeks, where a lot of the ads stay you for a really long time. And Vengeance Demon Hunters can be extremely good at damage, survivability as well. It's really cool to see. Windwalkers actually doing really well. And my prediction for, I'm probably going to be making more videos about this, my prediction for Antorus, my prediction for Mythic Plus, for 7.32, for 7.35, is that Windwalkers are going to be extremely, extremely strong. And Windwalkers are going to be sought after for Mythic Plus and Antorus dungeons as well. I know that at the top end Mythic raiding spectrum, where you have the top guilds, they did not bring any Windwalkers. They mainly stacked Fury Warriors and Rogues, like Sub-Rogues, Assassination Rogues and things like that, in terms of melee composition. But I feel if you're not the top 3 guild in the world, Windwalkers is definitely a good option. So this has been an update guide, on update video for what happened during the week. The news stories that I found to be very interesting. I'm gonna keep this series of videos going. Let me know if you still enjoy these videos. Let me know if you like. If you have some news stories that you find interesting, leave a comment below. I'll try and cover it next week or in the next couple of days. Thank you for watching this little video, and I'll see you next time.